Hello and welcome to another special episode of our panel discussions. My name is Julius Bismungu, and this time we're looking at gender diversity and inclusion in finance. Now, studies paint a grim picture of women in finance. At a glance, there are fewer women in the financial sector. Even when women are able to join the field, men typically rise to the top faster than them. This has been the sad reality for years. There are reasons that explain the status quo, but this is not an excuse. So, who's to blame and what should be done to bring more women in corporate boardrooms? So today we have a panel of senior women to help us unpack this. Great. We have Dr. Diane Karusisi, who's the CEO of Bank of Kigali Group PLC. Diane is also the vice chairperson of Rwanda Bankers Association. We also have Peace Wasema Sozera. Peace is the executive director of the Financial Stability Directorate at the National Bank of Rwanda. So let's dive into our conversation. Let me start with you, Diane. Indeed, many studies point to the reality that there's so many disparities across the financial field. Do we see similar disparities in Rwanda?
Thank you, Julia. Thank you for having us in this conversation that is very important. I think in Rwanda, we fare probably much better than other countries in the region, because we have, I think, 5 women CEOs out of 12 banks, I believe, commercial banks, the development bank, etc. So we are not faring, we are faring pretty well compared to the region. And I think this is mainly driven by what we've seen across the country, a lot of women empowerment from communities, local government, central government. And this is now coming to the private sector. And I think these trends will continue even post-pandemic, because we've seen women-led businesses have fared also pretty well compared to other businesses. So we are quite positive that these trends will continue in Rwanda. But I don't know what Peace thinks about that, because as an industry, we are not only led by women, but we're also regulated by women. Maybe that also plays a role. Thank you, Julius.
And I think there's no one else to ask that question other than Peace. Peace, how do you think women have evolved within the financial sector?
Thank you, Julius, and I'm happy to be, having this conversation with you and along with Diane, of course. I think that in terms of women in the financial sector, women have always played a role in the sector, but historically it has always been at entry-level roles as tellers, as customer care, in marketing, but increasingly, like Diane correctly said, we've seen women taking up, increasing representation at C-suite level and also in governance. She's already talked about representation at a CEO level in the banking sector. And what I can add is that we also see that in other sectors, be it in insurance, be it even in the small and microfinance institutions. We've seen the role of women increasingly go up. In the insurance sector today, 20% of the CEOs are women. In the microfinance sector, we're at about 35%. And this wasn't the case 10 years ago. So there is progress, albeit slowly, but there is progress.
You mentioned the role that women have played historically, but I want to ask Diane, when I was doing some basic numbers, I realized that 5 out of 13 bank CEOs, that you're talking about commercial banks, but also development banks and cooperative bank. 5 out of 13 CEOs are women, which is pretty much around 40% representation. And 3 out of 13 bank CFOs are women. That's just a 23% representation. I did not go into details to look at the board because I probably think the picture is pretty much the same. But Diana, is this a worrying trend?
I don't think it is. And I think having women leading large financial institutions with the leadership and the wisdom they bring to the boardrooms, I think we will see more women rising through the ranks, from tellers, from middle management, senior management. So, honestly, I think I'm very positive that we'll see more women. Today, in my executive boardroom, we have about 40% women representation. And we've seen women also interested in fields that were traditionally led by men, like IT. Our head of IT is a woman. We see more developers, engineers, women in Rwanda. So I believe these trends are quite encouraging. Where I see probably worrying trends is, the issues that were brought by the pandemic, by COVID-19 and the crisis. Like in any crisis, I think that the impact is never gender neutral. We always have women bearing high costs of the crisis. And we've seen this probably in younger women, younger girls, with many girls being out of school for a year, sometimes over a year. The trends that I think that are very worrying is the trends in teenage pregnancy. And this is something that is going to have a long-term impact on the lives of these girls, but also in our communities. I think this is where we need to look at and to find solutions. But beyond that, I think as for our industry, we've adjusted pretty well to remote work. And I think with the leadership that we've seen women bringing in the industry, we hope that we'll see more women rising through the ranks. Thank you, Julius.
Before I leave you on that, you mentioned that we're seeing a shift where women are now taking over the roles that were traditionally, that traditionally belong to men. You mentioned, for instance, IT, developers and engineers. What do you think is driving this trend?
So I think it's overall gender participation in the economy, in education. We've seen very good policies at government level across the country to promote these fields and to have more girls in these fields. So that's why we're seeing more women graduating from not only high school, but universities in these very particular fields that were traditionally led by men. So this is all the fruits of government efforts over the past decades or so. And we are seeing that these girls and these young women coming to the workforce today, entering the workforce, bringing skills, but also bringing very positive attitudes that are impacting the sector. They come with a lot of innovations, they're very daring, and this also gives us hope as leaders that, today you're having 5 women CEOs. But my hope and also my role is that we see more women in these leadership positions in the future.
I think the fact that there are fewer women who are CEOs, CFOs, and on boards, I think generally reflects the fact that there are fewer women in higher leadership positions. And my question to you is, do you think this has to do with women themselves or the organizations that they work with?
I think it's a cross section of issues. Huh? If you had asked me this question a couple of months ago, I would have broadly said, it has nothing to do with us as women. But I recently read a book, Women in Leadership, by Julia Gillard, former PM of Australia, and Ngozi. And there was a fascinating story that was shared by Julia where she said, as a woman, she had never really doubted herself being able to get into politics because she was a woman, but she doubted that she could do it because it was her. And having talked with a couple of women, through the years, she's realized that it's not really an issue of her personality. And it was a story that I could identify with, that sometimes it's also confidence issues. Confidence, not because we cannot, but because probably society looks at ambitious women negatively. And so we start to, kind of doubt ourselves. Can I really do that? You see a job advert and you look at the list of qualities that have been published, and you focus more on the things that you think you do not tick, where you don't measure up. Whereas our male colleagues, they'll dive in even if they have just 25% of the qualifications. So maybe there is also a part with us as women and a self-confidence, self-belief. But I think that society in general, and if you ask yourself, why is it that women are not rising to the top as fast as we would want to see? I think the fact is that I was speaking to one of the lady CEOs, bank CEOs here in Rwanda, and she was sharing with us an experience of a survey that they did within the organization about levels of satisfaction. And a majority of the women said they were stressed out, they were not happy. None of the men had mentioned that as an issue. So I think you go back and ask yourself, why is it that they're stressed out? And going back to the issue that Diane touched on of, I guess, being in this pandemic scenario, is it that women have taken on, a larger share of the workload at home that leaves them stressed out balancing work and kids and domestic affairs and things like that? And so maybe we have to think about that societal expectation of roles in the home, and whether or not that is playing a role in how fast women rise up to the ranks. I think the other thing also we need to think about, you asked whether organizations, we do have to also take a deep look at our own organizations, how we're structured, what we reward. Are we rewarding presence? Who is clocking in at 7 a.m. and is available at 8 p.m., at 9 p.m., at 10 p.m. on Saturday and on Sunday? And what does that mean for women in a society where we're still carrying the heavier share of raising kids and things like that? So I think that there's a cross-section of things that we need to consider, be it we ourselves as women and our personalities and what we believe about ourselves, the society we operate in, and the organizations that we work in.
I think before we go to the practical solutions, from the story you shared, for sure, women, from where you stand, women are looking up to you, young women are looking up to you. And I think it would be incredible, maybe in few lines, if you could share, how did you get to the success that you have right now?
It's many things. We could sit here the whole day and talk about life stories. But I think looking back at my own personal life, I had never really thought that being a woman I'd never seen it as a limit to what I could do, what I could become. I grew up in a home where we were raised, boys and girls, we were raised the same. We did chores together. We were raised to believe that we could be anything that we wanted to be. So I think that first of all, the way we parent, the way we raise kids is really crucial. And that really I credit more to my dad and how he raised us. My mother, on the other side, is my spiritual guide. I keep telling people that I am the result of my mother's prayers. So those two played a really complementary role in the way that they raised us. And then they believed in the value of education. My father himself, of course, having been a refugee, managed to sort of craft a better life for himself and for us because of education. So we were raised to believe that education was our key out of, into a better life as it was. So they really grounded us in a solid education. And so I've grown up, with an urge to learn, to know, to get better. And I think that has really helped me in the workplace, always curious, how we have a problem here, how do we fix it? And so that curiosity helps you to be more of a problem solver, as they say in organizations. I think that has been crucial. I think the other is learning through crisis. My first job in Rwanda, which was also in the financial sector, was working in a bank that was going through, a crisis. And I always believed that was probably my best learning place in terms of the financial sector. So learning through crisis, not running away from crisis or problems, but digging in and absorbing as much as you can. And then once you've learned, use that learning to give your best shot, should I say. I think that I've endeavored to give my best shot at whatever it is that I was working at. The other thing, I think, like I said, I credit a lot of it to my dad. My dad always told us, you can be anything, don't seek prestige, but always work at excellence. So giving my best job, looking at whether it's a report I'm writing or aim to give it my very best shot. Excellence, I think pursuit of excellence has probably been my thing. And then, of course, operating in Rwanda, in a country that believes in young people. I'm not too young anymore, but I was young then when I was exposed to opportunities that really gave me all this opportunity to grow. And the belief in women, I think that just opened up, incredible doors to test myself, to express myself, to give of myself, and to grow in the process of doing that.
Dr. Karusis, in 1 minute, if you were to share 3 things that made you become the CEO of the largest bank in Rwanda, what would these things be?
Thank you, Julius. I think just like this, we were raised equal, girls, boys the same. And we're raised to believe that education was the only path to success. So that this is what we did. And to be honest, I was never raised or I never grew up with a will to lead. This was never, my objective in life. My objective in life was to have a good degree, to have a good job, and to be able to, feed my family, just like my parents did. And again, if I would add, the second thing was, living in Rwanda, and coming to a country that not only is open to women leadership, but is actually looking actively and intentionally for women leaders. So I think it really takes true leaders to see the potential in other future leaders. And this is what is happening in Rwanda. And I always think to myself when I am working with my more junior colleagues, middle management, for me, I think true leadership will be to see the potential in the people who I deal with on a daily basis and expose them to leadership, because I think it's very important. And, I was very lucky to be trusted to, for people who saw some potential in me and exposed me to these positions of leadership. And this is what I strive on a daily basis to do. Do I make sure I see the potential in people, in young women? Because if I don't do that, I think, it will be a failure. But maybe to coming back to a personal trait was never see a life journey or a career journey as very linear. I think, I was also born to and raised to believe that things can change. I've, lived in many countries. I moved back to Rwanda about 10 years ago. I started my career in academia. I went to banking. I came back to government when I moved back to Rwanda. And then, I find my way through the financial services sector again. So I think as women, we also should not look at our life journeys or career journeys as linear. We have to be open to have leaders, true leaders who will see the potential in women. Thank you.
I think Peace mentioned that you can be anything, but I think these days people say you can be anything as long as they're hiring. And so let's talk about hiring. Dr. Dan, how do you retain and have female talent?
I think for us and for me, the key is to make sure as a financial institution, as a company, as a corporate, we are, first of all, attractive to women. So we have to portray, reflect a corporate culture that is attractive to women, because you can do whatever you want, and you can, if you want to hire women, but you can have women not applying to jobs because they don't believe you have an open culture. So I think that's the first thing. We have to have in place a corporate culture that is welcoming. And for me, diversity is more than just the numbers. It's really about inclusion and making sure women, girls, leaders can be themselves, who they are. They come with a baggage, their education, their family environment, social environment. So we have to be welcoming to a person as a whole, as a leader, as a professional, but if he comes or she comes as a person. So this is the first thing for me. We have to be attractive to all the people out there, knowing that they can come and become, who they are and excel in what they do. So that's one. Now we also have to be intentional in our promotion policies, even in our hiring policies. We want to see as many women as we want, as we can, because the business case for gender diversity has been made by a very smart consultant before me. So we're not going to come and make it here, because it's clear from numbers that more diverse teams outperform teams that look at only one perspective. So we want to make that business case. So it has to be clear and intentional for us to have, first of all, hire women, to mentor them in the workforce, to show them they can grow as young women, as individuals, but also in our promotion policy. Sometimes, as we said, when we have a promotion that we're supposed to give, men will be the first one to claim that promotion, and women, what they'll do is that they'll think sometimes too much, too hard to know if they qualify. But we have to be able to see behind the curtains and see, these women look at the results and not look at what is only obvious, look at how these women engage in their teams, and sometimes offer the promotion as opposed to waiting that people will claim and apply for this promotion. I think this is the best way for us to keep, not only to hire women, but to keep them and promote them, and through that, see them rising through the ranks. Thank you.
And I think those are the deeper issues that we see. For instance, the fact that we see less women likely to get promotions at work and sponsors at the same time. I want to hear from you, Peace, in 1 minute. Do you think, for instance, should there be quotas that dictate corporations to have a certain number of women in certain leadership positions, and you think and you see the government playing a certain role to influence this?
I think that in as much as I don't like quotas, I feel like they are too rigid somehow. But when you really think about it, I think that the existence of quotas forces us to become deliberate in pushing for gender diversity, especially at executive level, at board level, and things like that. Now, if you look at Rwanda's case, we actually have it as a constitutional requirement. The constitution actually requires that at least 30% of decision-making bodies are actually constituted of either gender. So I think that once you make that a KPI for yourself, then it gets done. The common saying that it is what is measured that gets done, right? So if we actually do set quotas and hold ourselves accountable to these quotas, then it will force us to be deliberate in hiring, in promoting, and actually getting women at these levels. So what we've done, maybe just to add on to that, we've also tried to push this as an agenda, as a central bank. We don't have a quota per se, but as we approve boards and executive level management of supervised institutions, we actually do push the diversity agenda. We don't tell them, okay, you must have 30%, but where we see that the board is not balanced gender-wise, or executive committee is not balanced, we do highlight that as a requirement of things that need to be fixed. The other thing is that, and if people do pay attention, is that actually even in the publications that supervised institutions do, they do actually disclose the share of the senior executive that is female and those that are male, board composition, the share that is male and is women. So once we become deliberate to hire, to promote, and to ensure people get at these levels, and also disclose, and people become sort of start to hold us accountable as financial institutions to how we're actually living out the gender mandate, I think that it will go a long way in pushing the inclusion of more women at higher levels of management in the financial sector.
I think we're running out of time, but a big thank you to our panel of experts. That was Dr. Diane Karusis, the CEO of Bank of Kigali Group PLC, and Peace Masoza, the Executive Director in charge of financial stability at the National Bank of Rwanda. Indeed, there's a strong need for organizations to deliberately empower women. If women win, society wins. That's all we had for today. For more, you can follow us on Twitter at CNBC Africa or at Julio Bismongo. Thank you very much. See you next time.